What is up, Drew Bronies? JJ back here from Run Pure Bets, talking a little college football. Saturday, October 30th. Um, yeah, I know you might be looking and being like, oh, wow, the clown gear's back. I mean, yeah. Yeah, did you watch the UNLV game yesterday? I mean, Jesus. I mean, the clown gear is certainly warranted. That might have been my worst college football pick of the year, to be honest. I know it was only like 20-0, and I guess technically UNLV was a bit live for a quarter and a half at the spread number, but it doesn't matter. If you watched that first half, UNLV looked completely lifeless. It was a little tough for me to watch, especially since I think Arroyo's a good offensive mind, and I didn't get it. And I know he doesn't have the talent, and I know you get a lot of guys that drop passes, and your best defense is a good offense, and UNLV went 3-and-out quite a bit early in that first half. Time of possession was dominated on the other end, and ultimately a loss like that, you need to be real, and you need to be who you are. And again, sometimes you always go back to your roots, which in this case, is a clown. And I think the fact that it's Halloween tomorrow adds that extra element. But I think at the end of the day, I'm not afraid to rock the clown gear. I will take a quick sip of my coffee, though. And look, we move forward to bigger and better days, right? Just so in case you guys think this is like a filter, this ain't no filter, okay? It's a real fucking clown nose. And also, it's kind of tough to breathe with this thing on. So it's kind of like wearing a COVID mask. But, we sit here and we grind out. What's up, Isaac? Keg? Oh, Kegger. What's up? Look, Kegger's doing a live show on the private end, and he's also stopping in here to say hello. You love to see it. Bassa, what's up? What's up? See, at least Bassa comes in, gives the social flaccid size or non-flaccid size, and says hello. Not asking much of you idiots. Just come in the chat, say hello, say what's up. No need to be bashful. I'll also do an NFL show after this. I will not have the clown gear on for that because I did think that Thursday Night Football play was a better play. Best Pie Eater, what's going on? So look, I have as always, I have 3 bets I'm going to give out, and then I'll talk through any games you guys would like. So just throw it in the chat if you want. If you don't put any games in there, that's also good because that means I'll have to talk less. I kid. What's up, Desmond? What's up, Dave and Cal? So like I said, I'll start going through the 3 games I like, and as you want to throw some games in the chat for me to discuss, I'll discuss them. That's what we're here for. Okay, so I will start with the first game I like for today, and I actually really like this spot. It's probably one of my best looks for the day, to be honest. Okay, so UCF team total under 31.5. Got this minus 115. DraftKings in New Jersey. They're playing Temple today at 12 o'clock. A little bit of an early start. I mean, they're on the East time zone, so it doesn't really matter. But it doesn't seem like UCF plays a whole lot of 12 o'clock games. Maybe it's just me. I know this will likely feel like another tough bet to make, especially after UNLV had their issue yesterday. But, I mean, if you want to talk about this being a big number, with the injuries to UCF, especially at quarterback, this number is just massive. UCF's had, in their last 4 games since Gabriel went down, they haven't had more than 360 yards of total offense in any game. Their pace has been far slower with Keene. UCF's been leaning more on a run game with Bowser. And actually, believe it or not, relying more on their defense to keep games close. Don't forget, this team is now coached by Gus Malzahn, a guy who's been a decent defensive guy and a good run game guy. So, it seems like with Gabriel, he was keeping the offense throwing the football a lot more. But since they switched to Keene, they've become more of a Malzahn run offense where they run the football a ton. They try to play good defense. And I don't think the totals have caught up to them yet, especially here. And look, give credit to Gus Malzahn, right? I mean, you have your every year Heisman potential candidate in Dylan Gabriel, and he gets hurt, and they make the necessary adjustments, right? I mean, they're not great, but that win against Memphis was a good win. I consider it, that's for sure. On the Temple side, look, I know this team's absolutely brutal to watch, but I expect Mathis to help keep this team move the chains, dual threat quarterback, right? UCF has no business, by the way, being a sub 11-point favorite on the road, really against anyone. I didn't want to catch the 11 with Temple just because they literally don't score. And if this is the game where their offense kind of wakes up, I just don't want to handicap what Temple does or doesn't do. I think they do enough in the time of possession end of things to at least limit UCF somewhat. Look, but this offense could wake up, as I mentioned, and I just don't want to. I don't want to handicap that portion of this game. It could be a rock fight, but regardless, it is tough for me to fathom UCF just kind of trying to pour it on today on the road. UCF hasn't scored more than 30 points since Gabriel went down, and they've played some subpar defenses as well. It's an early kick. Temple's got to be hungry to perform at least better than they did last week. That was a terrible game versus USF, and I expect them to bounce back a bit here. So Temple would have to give UCF 3 points for them to get over this number, in my opinion. UCF just plays a whole different brand of football that I think we're all accustomed to. If Temple can get some decent sustained drives and not be 3 and out every possession like UNLV was, I really like this total to stay under for UCF. Again, even if they have a decent lead in the fourth quarter, UCF is just very content to sit on the clock now and sit on the ball, which is kind of what they did in their last game as well. So I expect similar performances here. And again, more than 31 is just such a big number. So yeah, really like it under the number of 31. Okay, second game. It'll be a 2:00 start. Rice versus North Texas. Yeah, to me, it's right back to the fade North Texas's defense. Rice team total over 27.5. I know Rice is a brutal offense, and I know they're coming off an emotional win against UAB. But now they draw North Texas, and I get it as well. Western Kentucky kind of underachieved offensively against North Texas. But I think that's why we're getting a little bit of more of a generous number here with Rice. Now, this might be a bit of a hangover game from the UAB end of things with Rice. But the thing is, like, everyone scores on North Texas. They're the fastest team in the country with a bottom 40 defense and both run in the pass. North Texas, of course, will speed Rice up, maybe even force them to score more if North Texas can get on the board. North Texas given up 35 or more points in 6 of their 7 games. Louisiana Tech was the outlier, and they ended up scoring 24. Louisiana Tech is another tough-to-watch offense. However, Louisiana Tech's a bit of a better defense. Rice is not a very good defense, so I think we have a twofold here, and I don't want to predict what North Texas does or doesn't do, but I think there is a real scenario where North Texas forces Rice to score 28 here to win the game. And not to say I like the over. I don't want to predict what North Texas does or doesn't do. North Texas is a very volatile offense. They're very reliant on big plays. And their tempo could disrupt Rice, but at minimum, I know it will speed Rice up. So Rice might be trying to aim to slow this game down, but the way they're going to slow this game down is with efficient offense. And a lot of teams find ways to have efficient offense against North Texas. And I know that this is by far actually the worst defense Rice has played this season. Both teams have had favorable schedules in terms of strength of schedule. They haven't been that beaten up. But overall, Rice is very likely to get themselves into many favorable scoring situations, and they should be able to move the ball with efficiency because, again, everybody does against North Texas. I think this is just a very low number, which to a certain extent makes a little bit of sense. But, again, I think there's multiple scenarios where Rice can go over this number here. Rice can go over this number by scoring on their own, or Rice can be forced to score this because North Texas, still a pretty low number for North Texas to score as well. So, but I do like the Rice side more than being home, them being off an emotional win, where I think they can build confidence on this game as well. And this will be a game where I think they can really let the offense open up. They've really been struggling offensively. This is actually one of the worst offensive teams in college football, which might scare people off this 28 number for them. But again, teams just seem to always find ways to land in the box versus North Texas. Really like the spot. So yes, them over 27.5. Got that -114. That's the live number now, -114 FanDuel in New Jersey. Okay, before I go into the third and last game, let me just make sure we don't have any other questions. Your videos, it was like UNLV. Your videos, it was like UNLV should have been. Okay, so no other questions, right? So I'm going to go into the third and last game. Oh, you know what? Let me type these games for you so at least you have them, right? So this would be UCF team total under 31.5. That is at DK -115. And then was it Rice over team total over, was it 27.5 -114 FanDuel. Okay, last but not least, Houston Cougars host they host SMU. I don't know why I got that mixed up. And this is actually a pretty big game for both of them, right? I mean, you have 7-0 SMU, right? Do I have that correct? The Stangs, if you will. Yeah, so they're 7-0, Houston 6-1. Both teams playing really well, but they win games differently, right? SMU wins games with their offense. Houston's been winning games with their defense. I personally don't understand this line, though. Houston's had a tougher schedule than SMU. They have a far better defense than SMU. And I get that SMU has the better offense, but to me, these two teams are equal, like completely equal. And you put them in, and you put this game in Houston, and I don't necessarily understand how this line's not Houston -3. So I'm happy to take the pick'em line with Houston here. It almost just seems like you're paying a tax on SMU. I get it, they're ranked. I get it, they're undefeated. And I get it, SMU always takes money. They're a flashy offense. And it's always tough to want to back Dana Holgorsen, right? He's just, so yuck sometimes. But I think Houston really tries to slow this game to a crawl and let the strength of this team, which is the defense, end up controlling it. SMU is very likely to put a lot of pressure on Houston, but I expect Houston to be able to respond because SMU's defense is actually terrible. I know that they've had some decent wins, right? I mean, the TCU win is by far their best win, but they haven't been the same since. And you can make the argument, well, maybe they play up and down to their competition. But I mean, they beat North Texas by 20. They probably should have blew them out. I mean, they barely beat Louisiana Tech. Then they have a nice win at TCU. A game where they pretty much controlled versus South Florida, not saying much. A game that they almost lost against Navy. And Tulane, who's the worst team in the American. So, it's tough to really gauge how good or not they might be. And look, I can make the same argument for Houston, right? But what I'm getting at is these teams are relatively equal. They just win games differently. And I know it's an offensive-driven league now in football, which would make people want to bet SMU. But I liked the win against ECU from Houston. I thought it was a nice, gritty win where they really did a good job controlling the ball and making Ehlers work on offense. And Ehlers still got his yards, but again, he had to work for them. They completely stifled the run game. And for SMU, if this team's going to get put in a bunch of 3rd and longs, which they very well could be today versus Houston or tonight versus Houston, I like the chances even more. I think that was a gritty win by Houston against ECU, and I think they build on it here at home. They know how important this game is in the American Conference. I mean, you think about it, right? It's going to be Cincy's conference to lose at this point, so they're going to be in the conference championship game. So I'd argue. I know it sounds silly. I'd argue this is Houston and SMU's conference championship game because the winner of this game is likely going to be a pretty big underdog to Cincinnati in their conference championship game. So it's a pretty big win for both squads. And I look at both schedules, and there's no reason Houston shouldn't win out from this game. And from SMU's perspective, they have to actually go at Cincinnati. So when you think about it from that respect, right, isn't there almost, I mean, I guess you could cancel out motivation, right? Because you could argue Houston knows if they win this game, they're likely going to be in the American Championship game. So it's a big game for them. Whereas SMU will still have to go at Cincinnati, which is not going to be a fun game for them by any means. But if you're SMU, in theory, you could lose this game. If you beat Cincinnati, it doesn't matter, right? I just think motivation speaking, Houston has an opportunity to be in the American Conference Championship game, and they're going to be favored the rest of the way, right? They're going to be favored at UCF, they're going to be favored at Temple, they're going to be favored at home against Memphis, and they're definitely going to be favored at UConn. So this is Houston's conference championship game, and I think overall they're at home. They're building on a bunch of good wins. And look, both teams really haven't played much this year, but I do like that Houston's actually played. Tulsa and ECU, right? SMU in terms of conference play. I mean, their wins are, Navy, which, they barely won, and the USF and Tulane. I mean, they basically got in the bottom of the barrel in this conference. Whereas, Houston's been a little more proven. Houston's home. Again, I'm not sitting here saying Houston's going to roll SMU, but I think from a spread perspective, this line should be 3. We get it at a pick 'em. I think we're getting that extra tax on SMU, so you could fade that there. And Holgorsen has a way of losing these types of games. But I like what I've seen from him this year. He's won a few close games, and I think they can build on it here and finally get a decent season out of Holgorsen with Houston. So anyway, like the call, Houston has a pick 'em. Got that. You can get that anywhere. It's basically that all around. So we got Houston pick 10. That's at DK versus SMU. Okay, that just about does it for the picks I have for college football. I don't see anybody asking anything about any games, so I mean, I could just move over to football right after this. I could just slide right into the NFL. I'll say a quick shout out. So Chris, what's up? Pie Eater. Boss, that's pretty funny, actually. Mobasi, what's up? Interpol. Adam Kager again. Yeah, Interpol. How does Cincinnati not blow out Tulane? I don't know. Like, I don't know how people like want to bet Cincinnati games when they play bad teams. I don't mean you can't do it. I just like Cincinnati does blow out a lot of teams, and I get it why it's fun to bet them, especially in their current state where they're trying to run up scores against teams. I don't know. Like I've been saying this like for a year. I haven't been fading them, but they just have like a bad game coming, and like I don't know. And maybe they had it, and they're just their talent is so good they overcome them. But I don't like playing them against bad team. Like Tulane's going to get probably blown out today, but by how much? You know, the number's in there, so you're probably paying an extra tax on Cincy today. I'll just stay away, but I don't mind it. I don't mind it either way. So Georgia Southern, Georgia State's an interesting one. I've actually bet both their games or both those teams this year. You know, we know Georgia Southern's running almost like a hybrid triple option these days. I mean, it is a triple option, but it's a little different. If you watch their games, they're passing a little bit more than they used to. And Georgia State does the same thing, right? They run the football. I think, and this is why I wanted to stay off the game, I wasn't confident enough that Georgia State could slow down the triple option. They might be able to. And I'll tell you this, if they can slow down the triple option, though, Georgia State will absolutely blow out Georgia Southern. And I'm talking like a 3-touchdown plus win. If they can't slow down that offense at all, to me, instead of betting Georgia State, I would just bet the over. Like, because I feel pretty confident Georgia State's going to get their points. Georgia Southern's okay. But to me, it's all relevant to what you think Georgia Southern's offense does. Because if Georgia Southern's offense is going to play well today, and they're going to move the chains, they're going to have a bunch of third and shorts, it's going to continue to eat clock. Whereas if Georgia State can get this team off the field and Georgia State can run the show on offense, they'll probably be better off for the over. But needless to say, I'm just going to be off that game entirely. Ole Miss, Auburn, Bo Nix at home, small favorite against Ole Miss. I saw the total dipping as well. I've been interested, right? So Ole Miss gets a lot of heat for how bad their defense is, but they've been relatively keeping games low scoring on the defensive end. But it goes back to what I've been saying, right? Good offense can also translate to good defense. Ole Miss is a team that moves the sticks on offense, right? And they don't often put their defense in vulnerable positions. Against Alabama, they did. But from Auburn's perspective, I mean, look, this has got the opportunity to be a Bo Nix coming out party. I'd argue just as much as Ole Miss has been doing good on the scoreboard defensively. They've had some decent breaks their way. They've had some big key fourth down stops, missed field goals. There's been some points that have been dropped off the board in Ole Miss games. And I think overall, and when they've had leads, they've actually been kind of sitting on them in the second halves. If Auburn can move their offense efficiently, which one thing we know about Bo Nix, his home road splits, he's been much better at home throughout his career now. That's kind of meeting out a bit because he's actually been decent on the road this year as well. But when you look at Matt Corral's home road splits, his are pretty woeful, right? And this obviously is a road game for them. I think overall you can approach this a few different ways, but I do prefer the Auburn side. This has more to do with, I feel like Ole Miss has just been getting very fortunate with their defense. This is still one of the worst defenses out of all the Power 5 conferences. And points will result from a team playing them, like more points than would have. I know they had a huge high-scoring game a few games ago where we were on the over anyway. But they've been relaxed a bit since, and I think this is a showing out party for Auburn. Maybe you could target Auburn's team total, but this is a high number, which would require Ole Miss to try to keep pace. So ultimately, call it gun to my head, I do prefer Auburn, minus a small number. Iowa. So these games are never fun, right? So these Big Ten rock fights, so they're playing the Badgers on the road, and the line's 3. First of all, the total of 36.5, or about 36, I guess, pens your book, right? I've seen a few different numbers. It is wild. But when you think about it, right, where are points going to come from? I mean, these are two teams that play smash mouth football that really lack explosiveness on offense, really rely on their defense, have a ton better athletes on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know. I'm not a big Wisconsin guy, but I do think Iowa's a bit overrated. So when I say I'm not a big Wisconsin guy, like year to year, I'm just really not a big Wisconsin guy. I think since they've lost Melvin Gordon and Jonathan Taylor, they just, even James White back like a few years back before, I just feel like these teams haven't been the same. I mean, I'd even argue this team wasn't bad with Corey Clement, but like now, I mean, I'm just not a fan of what they've been doing offensively at all. Like I feel like they used to be a very good defense with a marginally good offense, where they used to be able to consistently move the sticks offensively with the big uglies, if you will, on the offensive line. It's been a little different now. Their quarterback plays dropped off, which is interesting, right? Because Graham Mertz was like a huge recruit. He's like one of the best quarterback recruits Wisconsin ended up getting, and he's been a fail. Their backups have been fails. Iowa's, though, this kind of the same scenario where they need to run the football effectively if they need to win close games, and they normally do, and they're normally their defense steps up for them. I just think, look, you could bet this under. This very well could be like a 10-7 type of game. But, man, it is tough to feel good about betting an under at 36.5, especially in college football. This actually might be the lowest college football total of the year, to be honest. So I'm not sure I love that end of things. But with that said, I have to prefer the Wisconsin side because, yes, I have my own bias on, I think Wisconsin's consistently been overrated for the last 2 to 3 years. I just think Iowa's really overrated this year in particular. So, yeah, you have to stick to 3. If a 2.5 pops, it's very playable. I'm going to be off this game entirely. It's a low total, and you could argue in a close game, take the 3 points. But I just think Wisconsin is a better team right now than Iowa, and they're home. So I think you get that extra benefit. The line probably should be about 4.5, 5. It's 3. I just hate Wisconsin, so I'm not betting it. But again, that's my perspective. Some value on Wisconsin. Okay, what else we got? So Pitt, what a big win, right, for Pickett last week against Clemson. And now they play Miami, which Miami lost a tough game last week, I think, right? North Carolina, I think. And what do you make of it, right? So Pickett, what I will say about this Pittsburgh offense is they are trying very hard to get Pickett into the Heisman conversation. And I'd argue he's in the Heisman conversation, but he's by far not the favorite right now. They're going to want him to continue to put up big numbers to keep him in that Heisman candidacy, right? I believe Pickett's a Jersey guy too, which me being from Jersey, it's nice to hear. But it is nice to see him showing out in PA and really developing, right? Because he's been there a while, right? And it's nice to see him, with NFL type of caliber of an arm and of a decision maker. And the game against Clemson was really nice because teams haven't really been scoring on Clemson at all, and he seemed to really put it on. Offensively against them with some really nice big plays. Miami, I don't know what to make of this team. They're fun to watch it off on offense at times. Defense can definitely be an issue for this squad. They've been dealing with a lot of injuries. I personally, I don't love the Pittsburgh spot. They won a Super Bowl-like game last week. But the only reason why I'm not against Pittsburgh totally is because, again, this team wants Pickett to win the Heisman, and they're going to do everything they can to keep his offensive numbers brewing no matter who they're playing and what the score is. So if you're worried that like Pittsburgh's going to sit on a lead here, I don't think that's going to be the case. I'm just more concerned that Pittsburgh could be a bit overrated after their win last week against a Clemson team, which, by the way, all season has been overrated. So overall, with that said, I actually lean the other end. I lean Miami plus the points, which is more to do with, I just think Miami's more of an even team to Pittsburgh than this line indicates. But Miami's been tough to watch, and Pittsburgh's been a humming machine. I think you could argue, if you want to make a bet that I think has value, I think Miami's team total over has some decent value. I think Pittsburgh's been very good offensively. Defensively, they haven't been nearly as good. And I know they slowed down Clemson, but let's be honest, every team has slowed down Clemson. I don't think Clemson has scored. Am I correct? Clemson hasn't scored more than 20 points in one game this season. Is that accurate? I think I was looking through and I thought I saw that. So against Division I opponents, Clemson has not scored more than 21 points in any game this year. I mean, think about that. How crazy is that? Clemson, one of the best D1 programs in college football, 7 games into the season, has not scored more than 21 points against any Division I opponent. So I think Miami's got a better offense to expose Pittsburgh a bit, and I do like their team total over. Okay, last but not least, looks like we got Michigan. Every week, you guys love to bet Michigan. And I get it, right? Harbaugh, Finally seems to have this team running decently. Interesting game here, though, right? Michigan State's offense has looked really good. Michigan's offense has been in a bit of a lull recently, right? I mean, I know that they had the good start to the year, right? And people were like, oh, well, this team finally has a quarterback, and this is what you expect from Michigan when they have a good quarterback. And then things kind of like got weird with this team, right? They were slowed down a lot by Rutgers. The Wisconsin game was close throughout. Mersch just threw that game away, which is why that score kind of got imploded. Then they go at Nebraska, where they played all right. Again, Nebraska's not a great defense. Northwestern, they beat up on bad teams fine. Michigan's just doing this weird thing where they're keeping good teams around in games. I'd argue they kept Wisconsin around until Graham Merchant decided to throw it away. They kept Nebraska around. They kept Rutgers around. Again, Northwestern's just not their year, so I don't look at that as much. Michigan, I mean, I'll be honest, like at 4, this does kind of feel like a big number for Michigan State. Again, it goes back to these high-profile rock fight games in the Big Ten. I don't like betting this conference. Like, I really don't. I just think that because a lot of these games are low scoring, it adds a lot of volatility to the line. One mix-up, one fumble, one sack fumble, one pick six, and it change the entire dynamic of the game. Whereas, a lot of you play the Big 12, there's a lot of scoring often, and you can have correction spots, and teams take a little more risks. These games, they play so conservative. So all things considered, I think you could lean the dog. I think you could actually, believe it or not, lean Michigan State's team total over. I know Michigan's been very good defensively, but I look at them and what type of offenses have they played that could have challenged them? Nebraska's offense challenged them. Why? Because they have a relatively decent offense, an offense that moves the chains. Wisconsin's offense doesn't really move the chains these days. We just talked about how I think they're a bit overrated. Not more overrated than Iowa, but Rutgers offense has had some issues moving the chains as well. They play NIU, Washington earlier in the year, which blah. So I'd argue the only decent offense they played in terms of yards per play perspective is Nebraska. And now they're going to play a really good offense in Michigan State. I think Michigan State can get their points today. I think if Michigan can do what they need to do on offense, I think they'll end up winning the game. And I know that sounds kind of obvious, but when you think about it, people might be looking at this game as all Michigan's defense has to hold their team in it. I do believe Michigan State's going to get their points today. So Michigan's offense is going to have to perform. And I know the total's low. Not that I love it over, but I would lean it over at 50.5. That has more to do with, again, I just think Michigan State's offense is good. And Michigan hasn't really been challenged that much by good offenses. And I think Michigan State's going to get their points, which will force Michigan to score. And I think that's going to be the big difference. I think Michigan, to me, Michigan's goal in this game has to get to 28 points or 30 points, because I do believe Michigan State's going to get theirs. So if you're going to bet Michigan, I'd probably prefer you guys just bet the over, because again, my perspective is Michigan State's going to score, and it's going to require Michigan. I don't think this is going to be like your 10-7 game like the Iowa was. I do think this game plays into the 20s, and I think if Michigan State can find their way to get four scores out of it, or if Michigan can get 28, I think it's basically a race to 28, more or less. And I think Michigan State's going to get over 21 or 21-ish, which is around their team total. So that's my perspective on that one. Okay, like Wolverines, everyone on State. Okay, but that I guess wraps it up, guys. So I gave you the 3 picks. I'm gonna pop back in here probably in like 5-10 minutes and start the NFL video and start the NFL show, where I'll go through the NFL games. So hang around and you'll see that video pop up in the next 5 minutes. But thanks as always for tuning in. Gave you guys the 3 bets I like. As always, folks, gamble responsibly, stay safe, and run pure. I'll see you guys in a few.